Doctrines in Indian Constitution is a very important area, as you know very well, my dear friends, for all the three stages of exam, because you can always anticipate questions from the doctrines of Indian Constitution. Hello, Vinay Kumar here, international NLP and IAS coach. In this video, my dear friends, I am going to simplify the doctrines of Indian Constitution for you in alphabetical order, starting from all those doctrines that starts with A and going on till Z, my dear friends. In this video, let's deal with letters A, B, C, D, E, my dear friends, and in my subsequent videos I'm going to be dealing with other important doctrines. And for all those of you who are watching this video, I have one request to make, my dear friends. This video is made with an intent primarily to serve the examination needs of an IAS aspirant. So if you are not an IAS aspirant and you're still watching it, let's say you're a student of law who's trying to become a lawyer, or you are simply watching it out of scholastic pursuit, then this video will definitely make the concepts easy to you, but I would not say it is sufficient. The sufficiency in the video is just the sufficiency in this video is for, as I clearly mentioned, attending the needs of IAS aspirant, my dear friends. Is that okay, please? This is a disclaimer that I would like to make in the very beginning of you having to learn from this video. If you are looking at a concept being made easy, this video is definitely for you. But for an IAS aspirant, this is almost everything for your exam, my dear friends. You just have to enrich your knowledge based on that. Okay, thank you very much, my dear friends. So let's dive deep into the understanding of various doctrines related to Constitution of India. First, let me try to help you understand what these doctrines mean. Okay, now doctrines, in the case of India, in the context of India and its constitution, is in the context of India and its constitution, doctrines are judicial interpretations of various laws and their enforcements. And from there, as the judiciary has interpreted from the time of working of Constitution of India, as and when judiciary has interpreted various laws and their enforcements, okay, it has evolved certain broad principles which now helps judiciary in determining any question of law. Are you connecting to what I'm trying to tell you, my dear friends? Which is related to, again, these laws where it has interpreted. Where it has interpreted. Are you connecting to what I'm trying to tell you, my dear friends? So basically, these doctrines are the principles that are evolved out of judicial interpretations of the laws and now helps judiciary in determining any question of law related to these laws, my dear friends. Fair enough? I hope you understood, my dear friends. I have simplified it for you. If you did not understand, I have a small request to make. Just rewind and listen to the same definition slowly, word by word. You will clearly understand. Is that okay, my dear friends? But to simplify it again for you, I'll just say doctrines are nothing but the broader principles that has got evolved in judiciary as the judiciary interpreted various laws and their enforcements during the time of working of Constitution of India from the time of its inception till now. Is that okay? Thank you, my dear friends. Now, so let us start with doctrines one by one, alphabetically. As in, when I deal with these doctrines, if I have left out anything that you feel is important for civil service exam, now look at here, my dear friends. I want to make this very clear. This video is primarily made for IAS aspirants. Okay, so I may not be able to deal with all doctrines that someone as a student of law would like to deal with. Is that okay? I'm confining myself to all those doctrines which I feel is important for civil service exam. So if you're a civil service exam aspirant and if you see there is some doctrine that I've left out when I'm going alphabet, when I'm trying to help you deal with each doctrine alphabetically. Please let me know in the comment box below, and I'm going to see how I can help you with it, my dear friend. Is that okay? Thank you. Now, so starting with alphabet A, let's start with doctrine of ancillary powers or incidental powers. Now, this doctrine of ancillary powers or incidental powers is over and above the doctrine of pith and substance, my dear friends. Okay. Now, many of you know what doctrine of pith and substance is, which we are going to deal with in detail when I come to P, alphabet P, my dear friends. But for your information, pith and substance helps you clearly come into terms with whose legislative competence lies where. If there is a federal government and if there are units, these federating units, it clearly demarcates the legislative competence of this federal government and the units. Yes or no, my dear friends? Perfect. Having said that, now when it comes to doctrine of incidental powers or ancillary powers, it's like this. I want to ask to you one question, my dear friends. What do you understand by ancillary? In any area of life that you know, what do you understand by ancillary? Ancillary is something that is there to help or support something that is a main thing. Correct? There is a main thing, and to support or help it, you will have ancillary work. Yes or no? Perfect. I'll give you an example from automobile industry to make it very, very easy for you, my dear friends. Can you, as you all very well know, it's so difficult to drive an automotive without a mirror. And to drive an automobile without a mirror, my dear friends. A mirror is a case of ancillary because it has nothing to do with the piston or, it has nothing to do with the motoring and all that, my dear friends. But without a mirror, it's so difficult to drive an automobile. Correct? So that is ancillary. Now, in the context of legislation, in the context of legislation and legislative competence, doctrine of ancillary powers means if an authority has power to legislate on a subject, then automatically it has ancillary powers or incidental powers to legislate on areas that are closely related to that subject. Are you connecting to what I'm trying to tell you, my dear friends? For example, you are legislating on forest. If you are legislating on forest, don't you feel automatically you have power to legislate on deforestation, afforestation, management of forests and all that? If you are, let's say, legislating on banking, don't you feel, my dear friends, you have power to legislate on the structure and composition of banks or the relationship of banks with the RBI? Are you understanding? Let's say you are legislating on tax, a particular tax. Don't you feel automatically you have powers to legislate on search and seizure as well? Are you connecting to what I'm trying to tell you? Now, if you have understood, ancillary powers are those powers that is coming out of, ancillary powers are those powers that are coming out of the relatedness of these subjects to the main subject. If you have to legislate here, then automatically you will have to legislate on these things also, for which you require, those incidental powers or ancillary powers. Are you connecting to what I'm trying to? Is that okay, my dear friends? Perfect. I hope you have understood. So that settles to us the question on doctrine of ancillary powers. Okay. Having said that, So let's start with B. In B, Doctrine of Basic Structure. Doctrine of Basic Structure of Indian Constitution. Now this is one doctrine which clearly put judiciary over a pedestal, my dear friends, in terms of the power equations between parliament, the executive and the judiciary. And you know why? It's for obvious reasons. As you all very well know, parliament in its constituent power can also amend the constitution. Yes or no, my dear friends? Perfect. See, parliament has statutory powers, yeah, and and as it continuously formulates laws for the country which reflects the ideals and aspirations of the people of that country or the state from time to time, it also has the special constituent power by which, like I just mentioned, it can even amend the laws within the Constitution of India. Yes or no, my dear friends? Perfect. What is the limit of parliament? Has the framers of Constitution placed any limit on the constituent power of parliament? Is the question now. When this question became substantial during the working of Constitution, and when it got challenged, the courts in the original, in the initial years of working of Constitution felt, true, Parliament must have infinite power, unlimited power in being able to amend any provision in the Constitution. The judiciary felt that way, and that was the stand of judiciary. But slowly and gradually, it was found out that this concentration of extraordinary power in the hands of Parliament meant the Constitution not only getting amended but rewritten. Are you connecting to what I'm trying to tell you, my dear friends? Constitution is not only getting amended in its provisions here and there, it can get rewritten. Are you clearly understanding, my dear friends, what I'm trying to tell you? And if a constitution is getting rewritten, what was the use and need of a written constitution? Having a written constitution in place in itself means, even as the framers of constitution acknowledge the organic nature of the growth of a country, they would want some foundational principles, to be solidly grounded in the constitution. They would want some fundamental principles to stay in the constitution in an evergreen way. Yes or no, my dear friends? Perfect. But then, unlimited power to Parliament in amending the constitution can mean rewriting the constitution, which is, striking at the roots of this, in principle commitment of the framers of constitution to certain foundational framework of constitution. Are you connecting to what I'm trying to tell you, my dear friends? Are you understanding? Now, judiciary slowly but surely came into terms with this. Yeah, it came into terms with this arbitrary, the scope for concentration of arbitrary power in the hands of legislature, and challenged it with this doctrine, which is called the Doctrine of Basic Structure of Constitution of India, which which says you can amend any provision of Constitution of India provided it passes the test of basic features. It does not violate the basic structure of the Constitution. It does not violate, that foundational framework that has been created by the makers of Constitution to be as permanent as it can be. Are you connecting to what I'm trying to tell you? Perfect. As you all know very well, my dear friends, most of the framers of Constitution were also participants in the nationalistic struggle for independence, and they had first-hand experience of their basic and fundamental rights being abrogated and violated at the hands of colonial power. Yes or no, my dear friends? Perfect. So for them, fundamental rights was sacrosanct. Now, if giving unlimited power to Parliament means taking away the part of fundamental rights, then what is the use of having written Constitution? What is the use of having something like, an explicit part on fundamental rights? So Supreme Court exactly stated this, and it said, see, you can amend, but when that amendment amounts to, when that amendment amounts to any basic structure of the Constitution getting disturbed or jeopardized, then I am going to intervene and strike such a law as unconstitutional. I'll strike it down as null and void. Are you connecting to what I'm trying to tell you, my dear friends? And so for which, as Supreme Court explicitly stated, what are these basic features of Constitution which cannot be amended at all? Has the Supreme Court explicitly stated? Not yet. But by the way of its interpretation of other laws, we can have a fair understanding of what these basic features must be, my dear friends. Like, for example, secularism, democracy, the republic nature of the state, all these things. Are you connecting? Fundamental rights, etc. Are you understanding, my dear friends? Perfect. This is doctrine of basic structure of Indian Constitution. That's alphabet B for you. Now, let's get into alphabet C. Doctrine of colorable legislation. Colorable legislation. What does colorable legislation say? What you cannot do directly, you can't do indirectly as well. As simple as that. You cannot have a law that is colored differently but has a different intent behind that color. Are you understanding, my dear friends? You cannot have a piece of legislation that is colored differently only to hide the original intent. Now, this is in the context of governments at different levels within a federal setup trying to transgress into the legislative domain or competence of one another. Got that? Clear, my dear friends? In a federal setup, as you know, my dear friends, there is a federal government and there are provincial governments or the state governments. Correct? Now, as you know, in most written constitutions, there is a clear demarcation. There is clear demarcation in defining the legislative competence of governments at different levels. Yes or no? Correct? Superb. See, for example, we have in our country local governments who also have their own list of items that they can exclusively legislate upon. It is at a level in the federal setup. And then there is a level of state government which has legislative competence over certain areas. Then there is the union government or the parliament which can legislate upon certain areas. Now, any of the government in general, that is how it is understood, but most often any attempt by the legislature at the level of top in a federal setup trying to transgress into the legislative competence of any of the lower levels, okay, that too not in a direct way, like in an emergency. As you know, during the time of emergency, the parliament gets special powers to legislate over the areas in the state list as well. Not like that, but the law that is being formulated now appears to be at the outset within the legislative competence of center. But only if you look deep into it, you will figure out that there are certain areas crucial to the, there are certain areas of state list that is being transgressed upon. Are you connecting to what I'm trying to tell you? So you can't color something as a law of center and have an intention to legislate on an item in state list. That is what in simplistic sense doctrine of colorable legislation means. Are you understanding, my dear friends? Perfect. Superb. Okay. So if there is a small, if there is only a part of this law, which is, only if a part of law is actually transgressing into the legislative competence of state and rest of the law is well within its domain of competence, then judiciary applies another doctrine, which I'm going to explain in detail later, my dear friends, called Doctrine of Severability, where only that part of the law will be severed. Are you connecting to what I'm trying to tell you? But are you clear with Doctrine of Colorable Legislation? Has it been made easy for you, my dear friends? Watch it again. You will find it really, really easy. Is that okay? Thank you. Now, Doctrine of Due Process of Law. What do you understand by doctrine of due process of law? See, we have these concepts called procedure established by law and due process of law. In procedure established by law, you are just looking into whether legislature, while formulating a piece of legislation, complied with the procedure that has been established by law, or executive in its enforcement, has it complied with the procedure that has been established by the law? That's exactly what we are looking into in procedure established by law. Okay, but if you and this is generally, this is a case in those states where parliament has a supreme status, my dear friends, over all other organs of state, like in UK. Even though the concept of due process of law first originated in UK, the UK did not, take it forward because it has, the supreme status being attached to its lawmaking chamber, which is the Parliament of UK, my dear friends. Okay. Now, having said that, but in US, we have the concept of due process of law, doctrine of due process of law. What is due process of law? Now, the law that is being formulated may be procedural, the law that is being formulated may be procedurally compliant, but the procedure that is determining the formulation of this law, has it been made in consonance with sound principles of natural law? There are two due processes, substantial due process, the procedural due process, my dear friends. But for essential simplicity, for your understanding, this is what I have to say. What due process of law tries to look into is Parliament or any legislative institution, when they formulate the laws, there is an element of, there can be, we don't say there is, there can be scope for arbitrariness. there can be scope for some kind of unfairness. And then when this institution which is responsible for formulating laws has advertently or inadvertently brought in an element of arbitrariness or lack of fairness in the law, then the courts can actually look into the mind of Parliament, okay, and see whether the law is fundamentally fair. The law that is determining some other question of law, okay, in first place, is it in consonance with the natural law? Is that okay, my dear friends? Actually, what I am trying to teach you is very, very simple. I am trying to simplify it very much to you. I hope you have understood, my dear friends. Due process of law itself. This law is right now determining the principles by which this law has to be made. Okay? Now, when you go with the doctrine of procedure established by law, you will just look into whether this law that is being made, did it conform to the procedure and principles that were there here. Now, due process of law is actually questioning this only. Are you connecting to what I am trying to tell you, my dear friends? And it is questioning its consonance, its compliance with a law that is natural. Are you connecting? See, there are many laws that don't have to be defined explicitly by humans as law. They are naturally available to humans. Don't you feel freedom of speech and expression is natural to human beings? Are you connecting to what I am trying to tell you, my dear friends? Freedom to life and liberty is natural to human beings. Yes or no? Correct? So, natural laws are those laws that comes out of reason, rationality. Are you understanding, my dear friends? Perfect. So, now due process of law looks into that, my dear friends. Fair enough? Superb. Now, let's look into the last doctrine for this class, my dear friends. Doctrine of EE. We are starting with alphabet E, right? Doctrine of Eclipse. Now, what is this doctrine of eclipse? Look into Article 13 of Constitution of India and its clause 1. Okay, you get the understanding of doctrine of eclipse. Now, what does it say? Any law, any pre-constitutional law, especially that would violate fundamental rights in any way, automatically becomes null and void. When this constitution gets operational and this part of constitution, especially the part 3, the part on fundamental rights, when it comes into functioning, these pre-constitutional laws that are in any way violative of fundamental rights or any other article for that matter, my dear, or any other thing in the constitution for that matter, what is happening? They become null and void. Now, in this case, becoming null and void means they don't die. As in, they don't become they are not completely scrapped out. But then, doctrine of eclipse, what is happening? This law, the pre-constitutional law, which is being eclipsed, okay, will remain but not in force. It will simply remain. Okay? It will simply remain in the background, being shadowed by the fundamental right, getting eclipsed by the fundamental right that is there. Now, for any reason, this fundamental right itself is removed by an amendment to Constitution. then this pre-constitutional law comes into force. The one that is eclipsed will come into force if it sees relevance. Are you connecting to what I'm trying to tell you? It becomes a post-constitutional law now, my dear friends. Are you understanding? Clear? That is doctrine of eclipse for you. Perfect. So we discussed on ancillary powers, basic structure, colorable legislation, due process of law, and eclipse, my dear friends. I have tried to make it as easy and simple for you as possible, my dear friends. The remaining doctrines also in the alphabetical order, all those which are relevant for civil service exam, for your prelims, mains and interview kind of questions for civil service exam will be dealt with in greatest detail, just like the way I dealt with these things. Thank you so much, my dear friends, for watching this video and learning from there. See you all in my next video.